Can you imagine the situation of a person who is trying to earn the livelihood through honest means? An e-rickshaw driver who has recently faced a problem that a company from which that e-rickshaw he bought, that rickshaw company has basically switched off the battery of that e-rickshaw, and because of that the person is facing hardships. Can you imagine the other scenario wherein the Yes Bank as a private sector bank has faced a crisis and RBI has imposed the regulations that the bank account holders cannot withdraw more than 2000 rupees just because some kind of financial fraud has been done by the higher officials, and now the problem is faced by the common citizens, poor people who are having account in this bank. Can you imagine one more scenario? Working in a private company, you are facing a discrimination in terms of promotion and merit is not followed, be it based on gender, caste, religion, or whatever matters. This kind of discrimination may happen in the private companies. And I'm giving these scenarios because today's topic is corporate governance and ethics in international relations. So welcome you students, welcome to this ethics core booster program at Legacy IAS Academy, and we have covered almost all theory syllabus now. There is one more session that is required, probity in governance, then complete theory is part. These sessions are very helpful for fast track revision as well as answer writing for your PYQs that is being covered here. In addition to that, we are providing short notes in the end of this session in the comment box. You can download them from there itself. Let's start. What is corporate governance? First of all, I will give you definition here that it is the system through which the company is directed, controlled and managed. Now this is a standard definition given by Sir Adrian Cadbury. Let's try to understand this definition and why there is a need of corporate governance. So basically, when we talked about the ethics in administration, we were talking about how administration should be run in an ethical manner and how there should be ethical governance. In the same manner, the private companies should be also run on certain ethical principles. Otherwise, there will be problem in terms of sustainability of these corporate companies, problems in terms of, we can say, its spillover impact on the society and environment, and in addition to that, the welfare of or the interest of stakeholders of that company, be it employees of that company, be it in general customers of that company or the other people living in the society, and overall we can say the environment. So basically, whether the company is solely working for the profit motive or it is working in the interest of all these stakeholders, this thing we have to ensure. Basically, in early years when Western countries faced lot of problems because of capitalism philosophy and corporate failures they faced, UK had basically the committee set up in the under the chairmanship of Sir Adrian Cadbury, and he is considered as father of corporate governance. Now he is giving this definition: the way company is directed, control and managed. Simply we can say that it is talking about ethical management of the company. What are the decisions that are taken inside the company, whether they are based on ethical standards, whether they are based on some transparency, fairness and accountability. These principles are very important. At the alternative definition, it is the governance system which promotes transparency, fairness and accountability in the management of the company. So this is alternate definition. Either of it is good definition. You can write in your answer directly. Now let's try to understand why there is a need of corporate governance. Before that, one simple equation I will tell you. Earlier session we talked about good governance, good governance, ethical governance. I had explained you the differences between this. And I had explained you good governance. Basically, governance that is based on certain values and standards like transparency, participation, accountability, and we can talk about, let's say, other values also. Now here, when we are equating that to the corporate sector, business sector, we are calling it now as corporate governance. That means the governance of the company carried out on the basis of certain values, certain principles like these: transparency, fairness and accountability. We will talk about the other values also, but before that, why there is a need. So at the start itself, I had given you different scenarios, and you can imagine the problems faced because of such corporate failures, and we can say the malpractices that are going on in the corporate sector, and how it has the spillover effect on the environment and overall welfare of the society. And through understanding and experiences because of these failures, we are now demanding that there is need of good corporate practices and corporate governance standards. The first thing you should understand is there has been several corporate failures and crony capitalism has been observed. Let's try to understand this issue. First thing, when we are saying that corporate failures, you should be able to give recent examples. Like Sahara scam is there, Satyam scam is there, or we can say that Sharda cheat fund scam is there, Yes Bank failure is there, ICICI Videocon company Nexus conflict of interest issue was there. So then you can talk about the corporate failures in terms of the failures of even banks like PNB Bank. Nirav Modi wala issue आपको पता है, fled the country by looting the PNB Bank. So corporate failures, and they are the examples of crony capitalism also. Why? Because somehow the people who are holding higher positions in these corporates or even the banks, financial institutions, they are using their position with some vested interest, doing some kind of favoritism for their own interest, and that is resulting into misuse or abuse of their authority or position and affecting the overall working of that private company or the bank, and that is resulting into failures. That's why somehow there is a crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is reflection of human nature. So we have been talking about human nature. Two views, one view, negative view, that is given by Thomas Hobbes, Kautilya, Machiavelli. They will say that human is a selfish animal. From that you can see that there is increasing greed in the society, and resulting into such kind of misuse of authority. Nexus, crony capitalism is there, right? So this is resulting into corporate failures, and when the corporate fails, it is not only the company owners who are getting affected. उनमें तो minimum impact होगा. Impact is basically on the employees, especially lower level employees. They are losing the jobs, and mass level layoffs will be done. Second thing is that the consumers, those who are receiving the services, they are not able to receive those services now onwards. Third thing is that overall society is getting affected. Why? Because the social capital that is created by these companies is lost. Now it is going to have some negative impact also, as well as on the environment. Unemployment, poverty will happen because of this, and the people trust in the business will be lost. So overall economic growth of the country will be affected. So this is the spillover effect we should understand. Then we can talk about is conflict of interest. So the people holding the higher positions in these private institutions, they have some fiduciary responsibility. We should understand this. Fiduciary responsibility comes with the position they are holding, that their conduct, their actions will be judged, and that's why there should be responsible conduct and responsible behavior. Now in conflict of interest situation, what happens is the person who is holding the responsible position, if that person is giving some kind of favor in self-interest or vested interest to their relatives, their husband, their wife, or we can see that ICICI issue, what has happened, or we can say that recently Marvi Buch, आपने देखा होगा सेबी के जो हेड, उनका भी अभी न्यूज में था few days back. So conflict of interest issue is problematic, and it result into corporate failures in future if it is not prevented. Then we can talk about is need of fair competition and quality of service. That is also true. Now can you imagine the situation where having the drugs that are manufactured by one MNC, and that MNC to increase the profit or cutting the cost is using some substandard material, raw material, or the processes which are affecting the safety of the drug, and mass level thousands of people are consuming that drug in the trust that the company has some reputation, that image, but quality of service is affected, and you can see that the large scale impact on the society, right? Public health is affected. Quality of service is when it is affected, basically it is failure of corporate governance. Need of fair competition. Now what happens is when there are deceiving advertisements, misleading advertisement by some of the companies, ठीक है, फेयर एंड लवली आपने देखा होगा, उसके ऊपर भी बहुत ज्यादा केसेस हो गया था. Nowadays in recent times you may have come across this news that many of the IS coaching classes in Delhi have been basically penalized by Consumer Protection Forum. Why? Because they have been having misleading advertisements, and because of that, basically the students, new aspirants, their parents are misled, and this is how the unfair competition is being done. So that is failure of corporate governance, and that's why need. Then we can talk about is next fourth one, sustainability of the business. It is said that business is not existing in isolation, it is existing in the society. Basically business in long term can be sustained when it is working for the welfare of society. Society is important stakeholder, and that's why if it wants to be sustained for a long time, then it should work for the society and give back something to the society, have social responsibility. You can see the big names Tata, Wipro or Infosys, how they are basically working towards welfare of the people, bringing some changes on the ground level. So corporate social responsibility. So it is very important, and when the company does not think about society and only thinks about its profit, it is bound to fail. And this is how many of the experts and famous leaders, corporate leaders, have said about this thing, sustainability. Then company belongs to society, same thing that we can talk about here. You can mention about ethical altruism that is required. Why? Most of the companies, they work only for profit, that is called as ethical egoism, we can say that. But somehow the company and those decision makers in that company should think that they are having all these resources, they are using all these resources and existing in the society. That means they have some responsibility towards society. The company, especially those companies which are public listed company, now the chairman or the owner of that company is not the sole owner of that company, rather it belongs to society, and that's why there is some responsibility of these corporates towards the society. Ethical altruism will say that the welfare of company lies in welfare of society. This is called ethical altruism according to utilitarian philosophy. And lastly, you can see that of course there is increasing role of private sector and LPG reforms we have seen. So private sector in last 30 years, it has grown significantly because the government itself is promoting after LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, globalization. And because of that, we need some corporate standards, because there is increase in the presence of private sector in delivering certain goods and services to the people and in economic growth of the country. So they are playing major role in the economy, and therefore there must be some standards, otherwise it will be complete failure of economy and failure of a nation. It will create a kind of chaos in the country. So that's why we need, we can say that, corporate governance. We'll deal with some details of all these, let's say, issues. Now let's try to understand few things related to, we can say that, corporate governance, such as we can talk about the corporate governance practices. So we understood now that what is need of, or why there is need of corporate governance, all these problems. But now let's try to understand what are the standard practices and what are the practices introduced by new Companies Act 2013 in India, which is also called as Act of Good Corporate Governance, right? Before that, in India, there has been several committees on corporate governance reforms in India, like Rahul Bajaj Committee in the early years, 1996, Kumar Mangalam Committee, 1999, Narayan Murthy Committee, 2002, and Uday Kota Committee, most recent one, 2017. Now, all these committees have given some recommendation. Government has adopted them in New Companies Act 2013. What are these? First of all, we can say that the chairman of a company and CEO of the company should be two different people. So it will avoid the conflict of interest. You know what used to happen before this norm? All these big corporates used to have all the family members running the business. So when the family members are the decision makers as well as the executors, there will be conflict of interest. There will be discrimination, favoritism, nepotism while executing the decisions, we can say that, and the stakeholder interest will be affected in the name of interest of shareholders or profit. So that's why chairman, who is owner, and CEO, who is the implementer of decisions of the board of directors, they should be different people. Second, we can talk about is, we can say at least 1/3 members of board of directors should be independent directors, or even 50% according to this act should be independent directors. Now, independent directors is very important. Why? Because there will not be any conflict of interest. There will not be any conflict of interest. Independent directors will be like third party audit or evaluation. They will look at all the, let's say, company affairs from the third party angle without any interest, vested interest. That's why conflict of interest is avoided. Then we can say that at least one woman in board of director. So it is a balanced gender representation there also. Then we can say that very important one, financial disclosures by the company in a transparent manner. So it should be transparency. And fifth, we can talk about is CSR norms. So 2% of the net profit is to be used for corporate social responsibility activities by these companies. So these are some good practices. We can say that good corporate governance practices. Then there are different, we can say that, other aspects related to good corporate governance. Which are these? Let's try to understand that also. One is, we can say that it is related to, or before that there is one debate. What is that debate? This debate is about, we can say that, whether it is possible to do business with ethics. There can be direct question like this, right? Corporate governance. You should understand minimum one theory question and one case study is on corporate governance every year. Ethical concerns and dilemmas in corporate governance, there will be case study. Or whatever the issues that we just enumerated, why there is need and all these things, there can be specific case study on that issue also in corporate governance. So why it is said like this? It is not possible to do business with ethics. Yes, we should understand they have some kind of diverging value system. We will try to enumerate them, understand them. Business works for profit orientation, while ethics will say that there should be sustainability. There should be sustainability, and the stakeholders, we can say that their interest here, they will focus on shareholders' interest. Here there will be focus on stakeholders' interest. Shareholders are the holders of shares of the company, so they will focus more on profit. While stakeholders will include employees of that company, then we customers and overall society and environment, all these stakeholders. Then we can talk about is cost cutting. This is business, what it focuses on cost cutting. Here the focus is on employees welfare, dignity and justice. And business will say that there should be concentration of wealth, profit orientation, so concentration of wealth. Ethics will say that there should be equitable distribution of wealth. Now this is the divergence. You should know these arguments and the typical ethical terminologies that you should use in your answer, right? Now when we are talking about this divergence, whether still it is possible, yes, it is possible, and you should give some positive arguments also, or in the side of favor you should give some kind of arguments. So what are these arguments? And basically you should give some philosophical arguments in support of that. What are these? First of all, yes, it can be done, it is possible. That is corporate ethics, or we can talk about is business ethics. Now you can give example of trusteeship model by the Gandhiji. So Gandhiji during freedom struggle had given or talked to all these corporates and capitalist people, and basically has given this trusteeship model. It is based on the concept that all these corporates are earning their profits out of society, right? And therefore they have some responsibility to give back to society. So they are basically the trustees. They are not the owners. They are the trustees of people's wealth, country's wealth. And that's why this trusteeship, they have some responsibility to give back to the society, and that's why we can say that it is said like this. Now when we are talking about, let's say, trusteeship model, you can give examples. Tata. So we have Tata Trust. For example, we have Tata Trust. So around 60 to 70% of the profit of Tata Trust It goes to CSR activity. That means ethics with business. You may have come across so many advertisements which are basically focusing how the business is done in the stakeholders' interest. We understand what you want. We understand what customer want. Ethical business, transparency, disclosures, financial disclosures. Infosys, you can give examples of Infosys, Azim Premji Foundation of Wipro. So you can give these examples when you are explaining ethical altruism, Azim Premji Foundation. You can give that example, right? So ethical altruism, we can say that giving back to society. Compassionate capitalism, Narayan Murthy, he has given this concept. What is it about? Let's try to understand. Narayan Murthy has given this concept. Okay, Narayan Murthy has been in news for some kind of negatives also. He was talking about that, let's say 669 rule or something like that. 6 दिन जो है आपको काम करना है, 9 घंटे काम करना है, something like that. So basically you should understand that whatever he has been talking, he is actually good leader, ethical leader, we can say that. And he has given this ethical compassionate capitalism. Now what do you mean by that? Compassionate capitalism means the philosophy of capitalism should be moving towards from profit orientation to the interest of stakeholders, employee welfare, justice, fairness in dealing with the employees. Now, when there are nowadays, you can see that it coming across the news like mass layoffs are happening. The companies are doing cost cutting, and because of that, they are simply not paying the salaries of so many employees. Even I'm telling you, so many IS coaching classes, they are not able to pay. Okay, are able to pay, but they are not paying. Somehow there is corporate greed involved here. Concentration of wealth, I told you here, concentration of health, cost cutting, employees welfare, equity. So yes, but in that also there are companies which are working for the employee welfare. Even during the time of COVID-19 crisis situation, many companies ensured that their employees, especially lower level employees, their salaries are given on time, they are not cut. Rather, the compassionate capitalism will say that those holding the higher position, their salaries should be cut, because the problem is not going to be faced by them as such. Rather, the lower level employees, they are going to face problem. Their salaries should not be cut. Rather, their mass layoff should not happen. This is the way ethics will say that. And those companies who are ensuring it despite of challenging situation, they are following compassionate capitalism, we can say. Governance without morality, sorry, commerce without morality is a sin. Mahatma Gandhi has said that. So whatever the malpractice is going on, whatever the commerce and greed and all these things that is happening in terms of all this, we can say that in the name of capitalism, free market, so that is problematic. Chronic capitalism, commerce without morality. So there should be some moral principles, ethics in business, or business ethics should be followed, and you should give such references. Ultimately, you talk about 3P model being promoted by the government also: people, planet, and profit. You can draw like this as a triangle and mention these 3Ps like this: people, planet, and profit. This should be, we can say that ultimately corporate governance, like this in your answer. Okay, so arguments, ethical arguments should be like this. I hope that now you have understood this. Finally, we can talk about, okay, in addition to this, I would like to also have some details related to, we can say that, one important issue here, that is CSR, corporate social responsibility. So we said that 2% of the net profit is supposed to go to corporate social responsibilities. So many companies are implementing, but there are some problems. Okay, it is implementing trusteeship model and everything, but there are some problems. What are the problems? Most of these companies are doing the CSR activities only in letter and not in spirit. First thing. Second important thing, if they are doing it, they are focusing more on image building of their own company rather than having this intention of welfare of the society. Second thing. Third important thing is that all these companies are investing in some kind of return interest. They are investing in only, we can say, health and education sectors. So it is skewed investment. Second, they are investing only in the states, that two advanced states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, with more than 50% of CSR activities happening there. What about the other states, especially eastern states, northeastern states? They are poor states, we can say, comparatively, and we can say backward socio-economically, and there it is not going, right? So that's why the CSR activities, they are supposed to be proactiveness. There should be proactiveness, and this is the way Narayan Murthy has also said, that it should not come from rules and regulation. Corporate social responsibility should emanate from the management practices. Very good statement that you can give here. Okay, so this is the way we should discuss the corporate governance. I hope that now it is very much clear, and if there is, let's say, question or case study also, all these ethical arguments and philosophical reference should be written in our answers, so that our answers are basically ethical answers. Otherwise you are writing all the economy part. Those terms that we are using here, they are ethics terms, and they should be written in your answer. Now there is very famous quote by one, let's say, corporate leader, we can say, western countries mein, Warren Buffett. Now what he says, okay, Warren Buffett, now what he says is that in hiring the people, three qualities should be looked for. Okay, which are these three qualities? He says intelligence, then he says that there should be energy and integrity. Now when we are, then the next part of that statement, or we can say that quote, is that if the person is lacking third quality, the first two will damage the company, will create a damage. And that is true. The person, if this person is not having values like integrity, shows weak character, the person who is highly intelligent and energetic will misuse the authority, will misuse the resources of the company, and will damage the image of the company. It will result into losses to the company, and that's why there should be focus more on integrity also. It should be balanced. So that's why knowledge, character. Mahatma Gandhi says, knowledge without the character, information without character, no use. Education without character, no use. It is sin. So we can talk about in this manner also, because see, intelligence and energy, they are more of aptitude aspect, and here integrity reflects the attitude of the person, value system of the person, and it can be very dangerous. हमने civil services के ऊपर भी ये same बात की थी. The civil servants, if they are having good aptitude but lack attitude, that is very problematic. So there should be combination of both. So even in private sector it is said like this. All right, now you have understood this particular, let's say, scenario. Now we can talk about his next topic. Corporate governance is clearly understood. There is no problem now, right? Now we can talk about his next small topic, an important one, ethics in international relations. There will be one question minimum, the theory part, and one case study nowadays they are asking on international relations. Even if they are not asking on regular basis, but question will be there, minimum one on the base ethics in international relations. There has been question on refugees, there has been case study on arms trade, what kind of principles that a country should follow, 5 principles while doing the arms trade. This is the way they are asking question, case study part. There can be in future questions on all these ethical issues that I have enumerated. See, question will be on these 10 issues for sure. And if it is not, you should be able to relate all this directly if broader question is that, like, there is no ethics in international relations, it is only national interest. If such kind of question is asked, all these issues are relevant. Just give examples. And the philosophies that we will talk about, who are the philosophers and all these things. But before that, in ethics in international relations, what do you mean by ethics in international relations? First, we'll try to understand this. Okay, ethics in international relations means whenever we are dealing with the other country, be it bilateral relations, multilateral relations, or the global, we can say that platforms or bodies like United Nations, in dealing with these relations, certain kinds of ethical principles and values should be followed. This is what ethics in international relations will say. Why? Because there is some basic understanding. Human universal values. Human values are universal values. Everywhere human is, we can say that, accepted as human only, or its values like honesty, we can say respect, gratitude, or peace, non-violence, love, care, empathy, all these values are universal human values, we can say that. And humanity, or we can say especially the emerging globalized world, now the national boundaries are blurring. The people are migrating from one country to other country, they are living there, they are working there, contributing to that nation's growth, as well as host countries image is being built, the way we have diaspora. So basically now in the globalized world, ethics in international relations have become important. At the same time, the problems and concerns are not now within the country, rather there are transboundary concerns, be it climate change, terrorism, or cyber crimes, or the issues related to refugees, influx, or we can talk about the other, let's say, challenges, emerging challenges that are happening, like for example, pandemic is there, transboundary river sharing is there, arms trade, international aid, wars and conflict. So all these are, we can say that, emerging issues, they are crossing the boundary, and that's why now it is not limited to one country. Now it is basically the shared problem of more than one country or global level. It is the problem of world, that complete world is facing as a humanity. And therefore, as a part of shared humanity, as a part of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, share, or we can say universal brotherhood that we say, yes, it is our responsibility, and that's why one should be aware about all these ethical issues and dilemmas in ethics in international relations. Now, when we talk about ethics in international relations, there are two streams, we can say that, of thought. One talks about moral realism, other talks about moral idealism. The moral realism will say that the country should always and always give preference to national interest, and that national interest can be achieved only through power. Okay, it's not only military power, it can be even economic power. Take China's example, take Japan's example. Okay, so they are not focused on their country's defense or military as such as compared to the countries like US and Russia. But yes, they are powerful. Economic power is there. Country like India, soft power, right? Yes, it is that, it is having influence. Now you can see that the people, especially now recently, you can see that Israel's prime minister is threatening US president, saying that you are not only our friend, we have other friends also, calling it India. ठीक है, मतलब उन्होंने नाम भी लिया. So that shows that the soft power has some influence, and that's why you should know that national interest, it should be achieved, and that should be achieved through power. Moral realism will say that. Now you can see that most of the decisions of any government or any country are based on national interest, especially in recent times. If you take the example of India itself, India has been buying the oil from Russia, right? When there was Ukraine-Russia war and all these Western countries had put sanctions on Russia, India was buying oil from Russia, and we said that it is in our national interest. It is strategic autonomy, right? National interest. So we should maintain the strategic autonomy. Moral realism. Give such examples, okay? Importing oil from Russia, having good relations with Iran, despite of sanctions, we are having investment in Iran. We have some kind of cultural, traditional relations with Iran. So how we can completely, cut off? No, national interest is also there, right? When we align our national interest from time to time, especially in terms of multilateral alignment, we can talk about, right? So nowadays our foreign policy is moving towards that also, multi alignment. We are aligned, part of SCO also, we are part of BRICS also, and G20 also. So this is the way we are basically, and also we can say Quad. So somehow we are aligned with the national, aligning our national interest with all these blocks, securing our national interest. So you can give such examples. And moral realism, you give examples of thinkers also here. Kautilya will say this, or Thomas Hobbes will say this, Machiavelli, right? All these thinkers focuses on moral realism. Now moral idealism. Moral idealism talks about ideal principles, ethical principles. upholding these principles. That means it is not focusing on national interest. It is focusing on, we can say that, universal values. Okay, universal values. It focuses on humanity. It focuses on shared humanity, we can say that. That's why it is called as idealism. For example, you can talk about is Panchashil doctrine. So Nehru, first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, he was idealist in foreign relations. He followed moral idealism. Even you can give example of नाम जो है non alignment movement, ठीक है, पंचशील. Even Gujarat doctrine, you give Gujarat doctrine example. It is moral, based on moral idealism. So you should be able to give such examples and moral idealism. Because of that only, at present you can see that the global peace is existing. You give example of United Nations, how after World War II, basically these institutions have overall helped establishing global peace, restraint on the power by the powerful nations like US, Russia. Somehow it is also basically now losing the control, and these institutions are not able to have the control over the kind of misuse of power by these countries. And you can see that somehow we are moving away from moral idealism to moral realism in the contemporary times. But still you can see that many instances, so whenever there is, we can say that, any kind of disaster, so any kind of disaster happens, immediately almost all countries tries to send the help, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, that we will talk about HADR. So yes, they will try to send, like India has sent 2015 Nepal earthquake, right? Recently, 2023, there was earthquake in Syria and Turkey. We have sent the help there, right? We have sent, when there was a fresh water crisis, drinking water crisis in Maldives, we have sent help there also. Basically all these are humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And when we are basically sending that help, we are not thinking about whether that country is friendly nation or enemy nation. Try to understand this. We are concerned about humanity. We are feeling sad about the loss of life of the people, innocent people, citizens of that country. And we feel, let's say, some kind of guilt that we are not doing something for them. That's why immediately we share that humanitarian assistance to them. And this is the way humanity, right? It is the humanity that survives. Example, other example, Vaccine Maitri initiative during COVID pandemic. So India has sent the vaccines to more than 90 countries, especially African nations and poor underdeveloped countries, and at affordable price, or we can say free of cost almost. We have, let's say, sent all these vaccines despite of, we can say, our needs at domestic level. Although the decision was criticized, but it was based on moral idealism. Try to understand this. Even the countries are cooperating especially related to terrorist organizations and dealing with them. Then along with that, we can say that the countries are also focusing on, just a moment, just a moment. Okay. Now it is fine. Okay. Yes, now this complete screen is visible, I guess. Not a problem. Okay. Yes, online students. Yes. Now just let me know if it is not audible and visible properly. Okay. Now what I was telling is, basically we'll discuss now all these ethical issues and dilemmas in detail, because there can be specific case study or question on these issues. Okay, let's try to understand this. Just a moment. Yes, okay. Now refugee crisis. So when we are talking about refugee crisis, first you should be knowing that Rohingyas issue is there. Syrian refugees few years back, how they faced a lot of problems from European countries. Rohingyas, Bangladesh, India, so they are facing a lot of problem. So refugee crisis. Now there is a prominent dilemma is involved here, whether one should focus on national interest protecting the nation's resources, which are scarce resources, versus giving refugee protection and sharing those resources with them, ensuring the basic, let's say, facilities for those refugees, because they are facing the threat to their life at their home country, refugee crisis. So basically it is a dilemma between national interest versus humanitarian grounds, we can say that, humanity. So that is, we can say that, the challenge that we should have, right? Now we can talk about, yes, now we can talk about is second one. Now just before that, I will tell you the details of refugee crisis. There was one case study that a border state of Northeast India, and the person is basically the officer, and he comes to know that the 200 to 250 people are trying to cross into our country, basically because they are facing threat to their life. The army and the rebels are fighting in the neighboring nation, basically it is Myanmar. So explicitly name was not mentioned. So yes, we should understand that whatever the people are facing problem, they are refugees, but they were also mentioning there that 10 people are basically the people with military uniform and arms. They are carrying the arms. Now when we are talking about when they are carrying the arms, yes, we should understand that they may be threat. So we should be able to segregate them. The people who are armed, they should be detained. They should be asked to drop the weapons, surrender themselves. They should be segregated. The children, women injured, they should be basically given the relief. All the, let's say, refugee camps that are there, so they should be given protection, and the basic needs should be ensured. So refugee crisis is one such crisis, and those people, you can imagine the problems faced by refugees. The feeling of homelessness, their own country not recognizing them as citizens, can be traumatic. Can be traumatic. Second thing, when they are going to other country, basically the people of that country are not accepting them completely. They lack the opportunities, basic things, basic needs, they are not satisfied there also. So they are continuously in struggle, be it economic struggle, loss of social identity, cultural identity, everything. So we can say that they are facing so many problems, and the basic dignity is not basically assured to them. And universal declaration of human rights, the ultimate basically a human right is human dignity, protection to human dignity, very important. Then we can talk about is wars and conflicts. You can give examples. Ukraine Russia war is going on. Palestine is sorry, Israel Palestine conflict, or Israel Hamas conflict, although it has stopped now, but yes, recently. Then you recent example, Israel Iran and US Iran conflict that is going on. So many conflicts are going on between the West African nations. Sudan South Sudan conflict is going on, or we can talk about that Rwanda and DRC conflict that is going on, M23 rebels. So many conflicts. Even you can give example of Pakistan Afghanistan, और we can talk about is that, let's say, conflict बीच में इंडिया पाकिस्तान का भी होते रहता है, right? So yes, wars and conflicts. We are going to talk about details in terms of war, whether war is ethical or unethical, what is just war theory, war ethics. We will talk about that in detail. But here you should understand the basics, that what are the ethical issues and concerns and dilemmas. Yes, the main dilemma here is that whether a country should go to war or not. Yes, it is a major concern. We will talk about what principles should be considered in deciding that. But yes, what are the ethical issues? Loss of life of innocent people when there is war. War affects economy, and therefore, because of economic slowdown, or we can say changes in the economic structure during that time period, the people will get affected, especially poor people, small businesses, they are going to get affected. War creates a situation of panic and uncertainty. Therefore, it will affect the economic investment also. It will affect the overall growth of the nation, and whatever the socio-economic objectives that were there in front of, let's say, country, in front of government, the complete attention is shifted towards the security of the country, and that's why it takes a backseat. The welfare of people takes a backseat, and that's why socio-economic justice and equality, all this takes a backseat. So wars and conflict is problematic. In recent times, it has come to, let's say, light that several studies have highlighted wars and conflicts have some negative impact on environment and nature. That is also true. You should understand. There was one study that Ukraine-Russia war has resulted into clearing of extensive patches of forest in Ukraine. Now that is very harmful. Then defense industry, when there is a boost to defense industry, it will result into pollution. It will result into pollution. So yes, that is the negative impact on, we can say, environment also, climate change and environment. Whatever the resources they were supposed to go to environment protection, climate change, now they are diverted for protecting the nation. Defense expenditure increases. That is also we can mention here. Climate change, yes, the ethical concerns here, of course, CBDR, equity, common but differentiated responsibilities. Equity is also there, but the developed countries are saying that it is responsibility of now developing countries also to reduce the pollution, to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So they are pressurizing us, forcing the developing countries like China, India, and they have developmental needs. They are supposed to use the coal for their developmental needs, and they are having the coal as a natural resource. So they are not supposed to be dependent on other country. So yes, there is lack of technology also, sufficient funds also. So developed countries are not giving funds and technology. All these are the challenges and ethical concerns and issues involved here. The kind of, let's say, historical emissions these countries have done, they are not giving proper justice to it, and basically we are getting affected, the countries like India, China, Brazil or South Africa. So climate change, here the ethical issues you have understood. Its impact is also problematic, and that's why we should also talk about the concept called as climate justice, environmental ethics or environment justice. What it is talking about is simply when the impact of global warming, sea level rise, extreme weather event, it is basically the disproportionate impact happening on whom? It is happening on the poor people. So injustice to them. Then when we are talking about the climate change action talks that is happening at international level, so whether we are having enough representation of underdeveloped countries, small island nations or indigenous communities, that is also a problem. And that's why climate justice will say that they should be also incorporated in decision making. Their representation is also very important. This is the way we should understand ethical. Then international aid, we'll talk about this separately because it is a syllabus topic. International donation, international aid and funding, what are the ethical issues? I will give you a brief idea about this. The developed countries are funding the underdeveloped countries, or we can say that developing countries, or international financial organizations like IMF, World Bank, they help the developing and underdeveloped countries in terms of dealing with any kind of mismatch in their current account deficit, or we can say that बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट क्राइसिस, जैसे रिसेंटली श्रीलंका को हेल्प किया और पाकिस्तान को करते ही जा रहे हैं आईएमएफ. सो यस, वी हैव क्रिटिसाइज्ड दैट, बट दैट इज नॉट द केस हियर. वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई दे आर डूइंग इट. They are doing it because developed countries have some responsibility towards developing and underdeveloped countries to ensure equity. It is in the interest of overall humanity on the earth. Why? Because if they continue to grow and remain developed and remaining, let's say, countries remaining underdeveloped, then it will create injustice, inequality, ultimately affecting this development. Terrorism, problems related to inequality, problems related to climate change, they are also going to face the impact of climate change, extreme weather events. What is happening in Europe right now? The heat waves, extreme weather event. जितना वो मतलब मैनेज कर पाते उससे ज्यादा हीट हो रहा है वहां पर. देयर आर रीजंस, वो तो एनवायरमेंट का पार्ट है, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज का पार्ट है, बट यू कैन सी दैट 200 साल उन्होंने इमिशंस किए, नाउ दे आर फेसिंग द प्रॉब्लम. Yes, of course, we are also facing here, but they are also going to face. So it's not only that they will do all these things, emissions and all, and they will get the scot free, or we can say they will escape the impact. No, it is not going to happen, and that's why it is their responsibility to help developing and underdeveloped countries to mitigate the emissions and deal with climate change. So international aid is also part of, we can say, climate change actions and other aspects dealing with poverty, hunger, malnutrition in countries like, we can say, West Asia, countries like, we can say, North Africa. Yes, international aid is very important and required to ensure global peace and solidarity. Then we can talk about arms trade, that case study I was talking. What are the 5 principles that the country should follow while exporting the arms to other countries? Very interesting. Okay, so yes, arms trade is part of economic business. It is a trade, right? Economic activity. but it has significant impact on the other country, the people of that country, as well as we can say if there is any proliferation of these arms to anti-social, anti-national elements like terrorist organizations, insurgents, then it will have impact on the regional peace and stability. And that's why the country which is exporting those arms to the third country or other country, that should ensure that it will not result in into any human right violation. First thing you should understand, there should not be any human right violation. So when we are exporting those arms, one should ensure that the past track of that country, it has not done any kind of human right violation. Second, you should ensure that there should not be any kind of proliferation of these arms into any anti-social or anti-national elements. Third important aspect is purpose of use. Whether those arms are used for self-defense or aggression against any other country. So it should be or it must be for self-defense and not used for aggression. Fourth important aspect that you should ensure is that there should be transparency and accountability in terms of all the transactions, because there can be, we can say that corruption or lack of accountability in those transactions. There can be kickbacks, bribe, everything happens in such kind of things. We have seen in what is happening in US private companies and how there is a corruption. Now last one, you should ensure compliance with the international conventions and domestic laws, rules and regulations. This is the way 5 things you should mention in that. Again there can be question in theory part. 5 चीजें लिखने आनी चाहिए, same things, right? Then transboundary rivers, it was recently used. For example, India has suspended Indus Water Treaty 1960. After you can see that we can say that whatever the incident that had happened in Pakistan conflict that recently we had, and then Operation Sindoor was there. ठीक है, तो पहलगाम अटैक हो गया, उसके बाद ऑपरेशन सिंदूर, एंड देन वी हैड सस्पेंडेड इन दिस वाटर. ठीक है, तो you must understand that ethical issues and concerns. When we are suspending in this water treaty, yes, it is national interest. It is as a retaliation to the neighboring country which is harboring the terrorist organizations, which is a threat to our security. First thing, that's why we are protecting our nation's interest for our security. But see the impact of if we literally stop all the waters of Indus. Millions of people will face hunger and malnutrition, right? Because Pakistan, its fertile land, Punjab, Sindh region, they are dependent on, we can say, food grain production from this region. It will lose, food grain production will reduce, inflation, poor people will die. उनकी क्या मिस्टेक है? पहली बात तो ठीक है, टेररिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, गवर्नमेंट है, उनको पकड़ के मारना चाहिए, बेसिकली उनको अकाउंटेबल रखना चाहिए, राइट? First thing. Second thing is that it is also impacting the environment. Try to understand. River has its own ecology, right? So the way we have Gangetic dolphins in Ganga and its tributaries, there are Indus dolphins there. Bulan जिसको बोलते हैं. So उनका क्या होगा? What will happen to them? The overall river ecology or hydrological cycle is also affected. So one should not think from that perspective. Again, here the dilemma is same: national interest versus humanity. So core dilemma, now you are getting this. क्या लिखना है आंसर में, केस स्टडी में, it is very clear to all of you now. Okay, then pandemics. We have seen in COVID-19 pandemic how the global cooperation was required. Sharing of all the research and data is required. Sharing of all the vaccines from developed countries to developing and developing countries to, we can say, underdeveloped countries. India has vaccine Maitri Co-op initiative. So pandemics, to dealing with pandemics, very much important. We can say that global cooperation. If the country thinks that will seek only our national interest, no, they are going to get affected because of pandemic, and that's why there is need of global cooperation in that, in the, let's say, interest of humanity. Humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Yes. Humanitarian assistance and disaster relief is based on, we can say that, shared humanity, empathy, compassion. All these are global or universal human values, we can say. When we are saying human values, ultimately humanity is given preference. But it has been seen that humanitarian assistance and disaster relief is also selectively given. seeking some kind of national, some kind of interest in future, some kind of return favors, some kind of image building, or some kind of, we can say that, misuse of that disaster relief by the host country, recipient country. So these are ethical issues and concern in HADR. Then border disputes. Yes, border disputes, international relations, neighboring countries, so many border disputes. Azerbaijan, Armenia conflict is there. India, Pakistan, India, China conflict is there. Border disputes are there. India, Nepal, बीच में आता रहता है, right? So fisherman issue, India, Sri Lanka is there. So border disputes should be dealt with some kind of, let's say, dialogue. Of course, they should be resolved in amicable manner, mutually acceptable manner. There should be mutual trust and reliability on each other's decisions, and we can say that the decisions should be arrived with some consensus instead of unilateral actions. We have seen that how China is basically aggressively entering into LAC region, Ladakh, you know about this, Aksai Chin and all. So border dispute, it is basically affecting our autonomy, our sovereignty, and that's why it goes against the ethics in international relations, we can say that, right? Then we can talk evacuation of stranded citizens in other countries. So when there was Ukraine Russia war, we evacuated so many students and citizens from Ukraine. When there was crisis in, we can say that, UAE, we evacuated our citizens. Saudi Arabia, many of the African nations, or Israel Iran conflict jab ho raha tha, we evacuated our citizens from these countries also. So basically in that evacuation there are ethical concerns and dilemmas, of course. The duty of nation, it is basically king's dharma to protect its people, not only in its own territory but outside also. It is duty of the nation. That's why the country should protect their citizens. Evacuation, it should be prioritized. Now within evacuation also, the people should be prioritized, and that's why it is equity principle. Yes, because the women, children, old age people, they are helpless. Those facing medical conditions, patients, they are helpless. They should be evacuated first, and then the other people. So this is the way we should understand the ethical concerns and challenges in, we can say that, international relations. I hope that now you have understood this thing. Any question, any doubt, online students, you can tell me, ask me. Then there is one debate. What kind of debate we are talking here? Nationalism and patriotism. Yes, let's try to understand what is nationalism. Nationalism says that staunch, or we can say that unconditional love, pride towards country, or we can say that nationalism believes that, we can say, my country is great, my country is great, even greater than you. Okay, this is the feeling. Nationalism, we have seen the nationalism in positive context. If we take freedom struggle, national movement, so nationalism, it was, we can say that, the feeling of nationalism was promoted among the people. But what is patriotism then? Patriotism, we can say that it is love, respect towards own country. Of course the pride is involved, but it is love, respect towards country and its culture, ideals, history, heritage. So we can say that that is patriotism. Now we can understand here the patriotism, it's not only the soldiers at border. The patriotism as a citizen, there was one question in theory part. As a citizen, how one can show the patriotism? Tell me, how can we say that a person is patriotic? Being a citizen. Yes, the person is patriotic when the person is doing his, we can say that, duties. So we have fundamental duties, Article 51A. Article 51A will say that 11 fundamental duties. If you are following them, you are basically patriotic person. Then you can talk about is like paying taxes on time, right? Avoiding any kind of, let's say, tax avoidance or some kind of tax evasion. So then we can talk about is simply following law obedient citizen, law obedient. Then we can talk about being respectful, tolerant, and inclusive towards other fellow citizens. All this is, we can say that, patriotic. Now you can see that when there is a staunch nationalism, it creates some kind of negative aspects. How? It divides the country. It divides the country. It creates hatred towards the other people belonging to other country. Like, let's say, nationalism will result into discrimination of those people who are coming from other country and settling in India, belonging to different race, right? So that will create into some kind of human right violation, hatred. It will divide the people on the basis of certain caste, religion, race. It is basically national. Then it creates a feeling that when the people say something against the government or the nation, or somehow favors the other country, which can be even enemy country, then suddenly you are called anti-national. So that means intolerance grows. It grows. That means you are not tolerant, broad-minded. Intolerance. You become exclusive, not inclusive. Exclusive. So basically, it is negative when it becomes a chauvinism. We can say that. Uh, uh, there has been several cases like national anthem played before the movies in the movie theater. Now there has been several cases that people have been even harassed and there has been violence. Why? Because the people are not standing when there is a national anthem. Okay, there has been several cases like this. Now it is basically moral policing. It is a dictation of the love towards the nation. It should come from within, that feeling. Okay, that feeling should come from within. तो उसी को real feeling बोलेंगे ना. आप कब तक उसको मतलब ऐसे dictate करते रहेंगे कि love our country. This is not, basically it goes against humanism. Okay, and that's why this difference you should know. And nationalism, if you see, let's say the thinkers like Kautilya or Machiavelli, Hobbes may support this, but the patriotism or humanism especially is supported by the philosophers like Kant, we can say Immanuel Kant, or even Bentham and Gill, sorry, not Gill, J.S. Mill, right? So they will basically say that no, human values are more important. If we talk about the Indian philosophers, especially, we can talk about Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, and Dr. Ambedkar. They all support humanism. They say that, we can say, the humanism or humanity is more important than nationalism. Rabindranath Tagore has said that I will not take refuge in the nationalism. Okay, so that means he is preferring the humanism and human values. Mahatma Gandhi is also concerned about the negative impact of nationalism, and in recent times there has been several instances like Pakistan Zindabad bol diya to people will be calling out them and then calling them anti-national. So इसमें क्या, गदर मूवी में सनी देओल ने उधर जाके बोला पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद, उसने ये मना किया था कि हिंदुस्तान मुर्दाबाद, ऐसे मना किया था, राइट? बट वो तो बोला था उधर जाके. It is basically, we should understand that we should respect, okay, and respect humanity. Try to understand the people can have their different views, they can be biased views. Human is different, right? Every person is different, so there can be biased views. They can be formed because of certain inadequate knowledge. Try to understand that, try to even change that. ऐसा नहीं है, they may change it, right? It can be minority, दो तीन लोगों का ही view होगा ऐसे. So you should not be dictating, majority should not be dictating on minority in the name of nationalism. Then minority will feel threatened. That we don't, our voice is not heard in this country. It is against democracy. Okay, so in this manner we should try to discuss this debate. Now we can talk about his next part, war ethics. Yes, it is very interesting. Why I'm saying interesting? Because war is going on, no? So we are always expecting question on this topic. Let's try to understand what does it mean. Okay, first of all, we should understand that whether war is ethical. Yes, war is unethical. We should understand this. War is called as moral but unethical. Already I have given 2-3 examples: Ukraine Russia war, US Iran or Israel Iran war, or other conflicts that are going on, right? So when we are saying moral but unethical, moral means individual standards, right? Individual. So any country has individual standards. They may feel that, okay, our, let's say, own country is threatened, our security is threatened, we will do war. Unethical. It is unethical because, let's try to understand the reasons why it is unethical. Because first, we can say that it is having, we can say that its impact, consequences. If you see the cost benefit, consequences are highly negative. It has negative object, that's why it is unethical. It has negative object. One war, so war bola to kya hota hai? Innocent people are dying, so many people are dying. Then loss of, we can say, resources of the country. Economic growth is affected. Poor people becoming more poorer, right? Socio-economic welfare affected. Basically, when the people are killing each other, that even scene is basically having negative feeling. It evokes negative feeling. That's why negative object, right? So consequences, negative. Innocent people die. All these things. It also shows that lack of human intelligence, wisdom. Because human wisdom or intelligence will say that before war, all other alternatives should be explored first. All the peaceful means should be explored to resolve the conflict. The way in Mahabharata, all alternatives are explored by Krishna. Small things he has actually tried to solve that conflict, and war was basically the last resort, right? So in this manner we should. Third, we can talk about is its impact. Impact is disproportionate on the socio-economically weaker sections of the society. So disproportionate on the weaker sections of society. Then what we can say that next part, yes, war is also affecting, we can say that, global peace. So it has, we can say that, you give some examples, no, quote like an eye for eye will, we can say that, make whole world blind. So there is very famous quote by Buddha, and even let's say Mahavir, and we can talk about Gandhiji. Everyone basically talk about peace and non-violence. That the hate cannot be removed by the hate, but only love. This is the way we should understand why it is called unethical war. Okay, so this is these arguments you mentioned, some ethical arguments. Now we talk about the principles of war ethics or just war theory given by St. Thomas and St. Augustine. Okay, so what are the principles? Remember these 8-9 principles. First thing, the war should be by legitimate authority. Legitimate authority is, we can say, elected government of, we can say, that country. The dictator or the king is not the legitimate authority. It is not will of the people. Those who are elected by the people, and if they are taking decisions, then we can say that it is a legitimate authority, legitimate word. Then just cause theory or just cause. That means the war should be fought for just cause. What are the just cause? See, the just cause is not related to being, let's say, what you can say, aggressive towards the other country to grab or capture the resources of that country, or we can say that expansionist philosophy. That is not just cause. Just cause is, we can say, protection. Protect own people, own sovereignty. The second we can talk about is protecting dignity. Okay, it is self-defense basically. It is in self-defense. This is the way just cause is there. It's for justice, right? So If we talk about India's freedom struggle, it was for just cause, because Britishers were not giving our rights. They were violating our human rights. Basic rights were not given. There was exploitation, there was discrimination, and innumerable, we can say that so many, let's say, problems were there. It was injustice. That's why just cause. Then right intentions should be there. Intentions, these are the intentions, they are the motives. We can say that Kant will say that right intentions should be there. Okay. Now right intentions, simply we can say that to establish peace, for lasting peace. Like first war, second world war, for lasting peace ultimately, है ना. इंटेंशन तो वही था, लड़ते जाना थोड़ी इंटेंशन था, right? Lasting peace is there, or we can say that global peace, like that. Then as a last resort, yes, we should first explore all the alternatives in a peaceful and dialogue, consensus based, and we can say that mediation, arbitration. जैसे अभी देख रहे हो आप, ईरान और यूएस में मेडिएशन कतार कर रहा है, इजिप्ट करता रहता है. So you should know that mediator, Turkey is there. So mediators are very important, and yes, war should be last resort. मतलब कुछ भी बचा नहीं है, then last resort. Then when the war is fought as a last resort, it should be proportional. Proportional means what? When the Ukraine and Russia is fighting, if Russia is using all the lethal, let's say, weapons against the Ukraine, which it is not having, then it is disproportionate war. That's why most of the Western countries were running towards the Ukraine to support it. It will be disproportionate, right? It is disproportionate. So it should be proportional. That means simply we can say Operation Sindoor, and thereafter, let's say India-Pakistan conflict was happening. So it was not disproportionate. We were focusing only on eliminating the terrorist organizations on that soil. So it was proportionate. We were not, let's say, harming the innocent people. We were not having the intention to target the armed forces of Pakistan. This way it is, we can say, proportional. Strong probability of success, otherwise don't attack. Don't do the war. If you don't have the success in mind, यूक्रेन रशिया वॉर 2022 में स्टार्ट हुआ था, अभी तक चल ही रहा है. 2026 वर्ल्ड वॉर से भी आगे जाएगा ये तो, राइट? 7-year वॉर से भी आगे जाएगा. This is the strong probability of success should be there. Otherwise, it is draining the resources of both countries, and it is not in the interest of anyone's country's let's say interest, we can say, or people. So it is going to affect the people of both countries and their interest. Protection of prisoners of war. So those who have been captured or those who have surrendered, they should not be exploited. They should not be harmed. There should be respect towards them. Basic, let's say, facilities should be given to them. No harm to innocent people. Yes, there should be segregation of military and civilians during the war, and war should be fought between militaries of two countries, and there should not be any attack on the civilian infrastructure or civilians. No use of unethical means and weapons. Yes, it is also important. If one country is having nuclear weapons and other country is not having nuclear weapon, so this country should not use the nuclear weapon. It is unethical means. So this is what just war theory will say. So you should be able to mention all these, let's say, principles in your answer. All right. Now we can talk about is refugees versus illegal migrant. Yes, basically there was question on refugees, talking about their fundamental rights, we can say that. Let's try to understand what are these. What is the basic difference between these two? Yes, tell me. What is the basic difference? Basic difference will say that refugees, basically they are facing threat to their life. Okay, there is threat to their life in their own country. So there is some kind of political persecution. There is some kind of political persecution happening here for these people, and they are basically seeking their safety of their own life in other countries. So they are asylum seekers, we can say that, refugees. They are not threat to the other country. Illegal migrants, they are seeking better economic opportunities. Economic opportunities like Bangladesh. From Bangladesh, so many, let's say, illegal migrants entered into India. Assam Accord, you may have learned in history part and internal security. So illegal migrants is, we can say, that threat to our security, instability in Northeast India. You give example, Assam इंसर्जेंसी इन नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया. अभी जो मैती एंड कुकी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल रहा है मणिपुर में, यू कैन गिव दैट एग्जांपल. Illegal migrants also result in, we can say, that burden on resources, burden on our resources, and that's why they should be identified and they should be repatriated to their home country. So this is very basic. But refugees are facing threat to their life and they should not be repatriated. You should know the legal aspect. At international level, there is UN Refugee Convention. India has not signed that. 1951 Convention and the Protocol 1967. India has not signed both of them. But still, India will consider refugee problem on humanitarian ground and will not repatriate them. You give example of many Rohingyas, thousands of, around 30 to 40,000 Rohingyas are living in India. They are given basic facilities. Even they are given the job cards, or we can say some basic identity cards, so that they can do the employment, basic livelihood activities in India. Okay, so this is the way India follows some basic, let's say, standards. Atiti Devo Bhava or Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. These principles are followed by India, and therefore India will not repatriate unless and until there is no threat to their life in their home country. This is the case you should understand, right? So refugees and illegal migrant difference. We can always expect question. Ethical issues involved in the refugee crisis we have already discussed in the earlier part. Although I will briefly mention this, humanitarian, let's say, aspect is involved. Their dignity, the state of homelessness, lack of citizenship. Okay, their own country is not accepting them as citizens. We can say the economic and financial problems these people will face. Then the social isolation, the cultural isolation that these people will face. So mental stress is there. Lot of, let's say, problems these people are facing, refugees, and that's why on the humanitarian ground they should be given some basic facilities, and their what you can say, bare minimum human rights should be upheld by the host country. In this manner you should talk about this issue. Now we can talk about next part. Next part is, we can say that this is the syllabus topic, ethical issues in the international funding. First of all, we'll try to understand, already we talked about why funding is given, international funding. Three modes of funding we will talk about. First mode is, we can talk about is developed countries. Giving funds to international monetary organizations, financial organizations like IMF, World Bank, and then in turn these financial institutions are funding, giving loans to developing and underdeveloped countries This is one mode, we can say that. Second mode, when they can directly give the funds, developed countries to developing countries, direct funding. And third we can talk about is developing countries to developing and underdeveloping countries. Underdeveloped countries like India, or we can say the countries as a part of BRICS. So we have BRICS banks, right? Or let's say Asian Development Bank we have, or we can say that the New Development Bank is there basically for BRICS countries. So they are going to provide, AIIB by China is there. So all these are providing developing countries to underdeveloped countries, right? All right, now ethical issues involved in international funding. Yes, so when we are talking about international aid, funding, or grants and loans are given, there are some issues. What are these issues? Let's try to understand. First, there is lack of free will. That means the donor agencies or the donor country are imposing on certain conditionalities. Okay, conditionalities. Conditional aid, that's why it is there. Okay, conditional aid. So conditionalities will affect the free will of the country. So autonomy and sovereignty is affected of the receiving nation. Then conflict of interest. Many times the donor agencies have interest in investment. Like many countries will, let's say European countries will try to provide aid to some African nations by keeping in mind that in future they will give us some kind of rights for resource exploitation, because these countries have minerals. Ultimately they will give favor to that country क्योंकि उन्होंने help किया था पहले. This is kept, conflict of interest is there, right? Even the donor agencies or some agencies, like for example you can talk about is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So it is philanthropic organization, international aid is there. So yes, philanthropic organization to develop countries, you can add that also. Philanthropist, Bill and Melinda Gates or Ford Foundation, all these are philanthropic organizations. So they are also providing funds to developing and underdeveloped countries. So what happens is, so you have this example of Bill and Melinda Gates. So you know Bill Gates, his company is has investment in manufacturing of certain drugs, medical. And this same foundation is basically investing in developing and underdeveloping countries in terms of clinical trials, in terms of some, let's say, testing of drugs, and also distribution of these drugs, although free of cost or some minimal cost, and having some contracts with the government, even government of India. कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट हो गया ना, वहां पे आप मैन्युफैक्चर कर रहे हो, यहाँ पे आप बेच भी रहे हो, ऐसे चलेगा इन द नेम ऑफ फिलॉन्थ्रॉपी, राइट? इट इज नॉट गुड, इट इज कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. Lack of transparency. Many times when the aid is given, the conditionalities, or we can say the transparent manner the transactions are not happening, then it affects the, we can say that, the free will autonomy of that country. Vested interest of the donors, we talked about that. जो वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट होता है, इसलिए वो हम बोल सकते हैं कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है. Imposition of Western values. So for example, I will give you example when India took the loan from IMF, when we, let's say, faced the BOP crisis in 1990s. So yes, that time there was imposition, sorry, excuse me. So imposition of Western values, especially good governance, right? Good governance values, or we can say that this LPG reforms were brought because of imposition of those values. Even we can say at present those, let's say, values are imposed by Western countries when they are giving aid. Then lack of equality. Of course, the donor agency will feel that they are superior, and the receiving agent countries, they are basically at lower pedestals, and that's why there is, we can say, inequality that in that transaction. Lack of wisdom and accountability in the use of funds. So the receiving country, there is lack of wisdom how to utilize it. They don't have the appropriate mechanism, institutional reforms are not there how to utilize it, and there can be, let's say, misuse of funds for other functions, and they are not used for intended purpose. So there can be a lack of accountability also. Okay, so ultimately we can say that these conditionalities affect the sovereignty of the nation, free will of the nation, conflict of interest. So all these should be avoided to ensure ethics in international funding. So this is also, we can say that, very expected topic. And finally we can talk about one question that was asked, I guess it was asked in first question 2022 paper. So 2022 exam, and that too first question asked comprehensive national power. What is comprehensive national power? And that comprehensive national power के तीन component होता है. So how it is relevant? So let's try to discuss that, and you also try to write answer after this discussion. First, let's try to understand what is comprehensive national power. Basically, comprehensive national power is about the power, or we can say that the kind of impact, influence the country has in international dealings on other countries at international platforms, and this is called as comprehensive national power. The word comprehensive is very important. It includes so many aspects. Which are these aspects? First of all, defense. Of course, power matlab defense. Everyone will try to write first this thing. So who are these countries who are dependent on defense? US, Russia, right? These countries, Israel, they will focus more on defense expenditure. Then second is technology. Now, which are the countries which focuses on technology and they are powerful? We can talk about Japan, South Korea, European countries. They are focusing on technology, so they are powerful. Even defense technology, we can say that. Like France, so we are, let's say, importing Rafale aircraft from the France. छोटा सा country है. We are basically why defense technology. Then economy, you can give example of China, Japan. The countries, they are like Germany. You can talk about power, economy. Then democracy. We have India, Brazil, South Africa. They will say that we are democratic. Australia, right? So democracy is also part of, we can say, soft power. We will talk about that also. Human capital, yes. So human capital in terms of both intelligence as well as values and character, that is human power or human capital. Scandinavian nations, Sweden, Norway, Finland, they are very, let's say, top rankers in human development index. वो क्या है, human capital की वजह से. It is also part of comprehensiveness. Soft power, again give example of India. At international level, we promote peace, yoga, or meditation, or we are promoting, the diaspora is promoting our, let's say, culture, peace, tolerance, all these values are promoted. So we can say that soft power we have. Social harmony, it depends on, we can say that, internal stability, harmonious community, right? The way people are having social capital, the country having social capital. We can talk about the East Asian countries, okay, Southeast Asian countries, Japan is also there, or South Korea is also there. They have social harmony, and to some extent we can say because of that they are having comprehensive, it is part of their comprehensive national power. But the three important elements of comprehensive national power, in that question also they have mentioned. How? Let's try to understand. Human capital. We can say that human, it's not only the IQ or human intelligence. Okay. It should be complemented with values and character of people. Swami Vivekananda has famously said that country or society is not strong because of the weapons, or we can say that the power of, or let's say, powerful weapons that country is having, atomic power weapons or something. This is intelligence, no, weapons and all this thing. But because of morality of the people, character of the people, values and character. So if people have intelligence and lack values, the exploitation. The strong will exploit weak, injustice, discrimination, inequality will be there, and because of that, the country will face lot of problems, corruption, misuse of power, and that country will not be stable. There will be instability, conflicts, and we can say that always there will be some kind of let's say violence happening in the country. So human capital in this form is very important. Give quotation by Vivekananda here. Second, soft power. Soft power, we can say that promotion of values like peace, non-violence. We can say that tolerance, inclusiveness, right? So this is soft power. At international stage, we are promoting this through yoga, values by Mahatma Gandhi. Okay. So we are promoting at international level. So International Peace Day is celebrated, International Day of Non-Violence, sorry, in the name of Mahatma Gandhi. Yoga Day, 21st of June. So at world level we are celebrating. Give this example, they are basically soft power. Then we talk about 3Ds as soft power. What is this? Demography, demography, and demand as a part of economy, right? So this is, we can say, soft power that we are having at world stage. We are having, we can say, very large democracy, we can say largest democracy in the world. Then now we are most populous nation also, and because of that demand is there, developing nation, right? So this is soft power. Ultimately the countries will want democratic country for investment, stable political stability. Demography, that will boost the demand, right? Because consumer people will buy the things and demand is there, so economic growth will be there. This is soft power. People will want that to invest in that country. This is soft power. Then social harmony. Yes, social harmony, ultimately we can say that the human capital plus soft power is equal to social harmony. In this manner, we can talk about the equation here, and we can say social harmony is resulting in social capital. We can talk like this, it is resulting into social capital. And ultimately, this social capital is very strong instrument of any country. Whenever there is emergency, whenever there is warlike situation, conflicts, all the community, people stand together. They stand together with the government. They have trust in the government. And now the government can take very strong actions against any enemy country. Okay, people are there to support government. They will do anything to support the government decision. This is, we can say that, the social capital, and that's why social harmony is very important part of comprehensive national power. So in this manner, we should discuss this particular question, try to write answer to this question, and in this way, we have basically covered two important topics for our syllabus, that is corporate governance and ethics in international relations. So whatever the code based questions or case studies are there, try to give answers to those questions. If you are not able to answer them properly or you need feedback, talk to me, talk to, let's say, the expert who has experience in this field for last 7 years, guiding so many toppers, including last year all India rank 2. So yes, if you want such guidance, contact Legacy IS Academy, and I am there to guide you. I am available to guide you. If you have any question, let me know. Otherwise, we'll stop now. In the next session, we'll cover the last theory syllabus point, that is probity in governance. Very, very important. 3 to 4 questions every year in your theory part, and minimum 2 to 3 case studies also. So we'll cover all the syllabus topics mentioned in probity in governance. And after that, 4 sessions we are going to have on the case study. I have identified 10 most important themes where UPC keeps on repeating all these themes. So I will cover some of the PYQs also. I will give you standard framework for all the themes. You are going to use them in your answer anyhow with the same context or subject matter for that case study that is asked in the question. Okay, so let us stop then and keep following these sessions. Share with your friends, like and subscribe to channel of Legacy IS Academy. Thank you. Let us stop.